in Bukavu who had really taken up the cause of women. And I sat in on a few of their meetings, and I was just listening to what they were saying. And, you know, the Congolese army, it's a weird phrase, because what is it? Is there really such a thing as a Congolese army? It's a molding of warlords from other armies put into, and other countries melded into one army that isn't really a Congolese army. And I think there are many men in Congo who don't feel that the army represents them and that the violence represents them, and they have a very different sensibility. And I think the question is, how do men organize those men and bring those men forward? You'll find a lot of them in the universities, a lot of them are younger men, a lot of them are men who are just simply outside that system. And I was able to just sit and listen to men talking about the shame they feel, the horror they feel about what has been done to their sisters and their mothers and their girlfriends and their wives, and the lack of control, and how it's dehumanized them, and how it's made them feel less men, and how it's made them feel that they've lost any rights to their country, as well as to connecting to the women of their country. And I think as this movement grows and galvanizes, there is real hope for the future of the Congo, because I think as men begin to see that they are in great partnership and solidarity with the women who are being raped, and that no woman rapes herself. You know, 95% of the women, of violence that happens towards women in the world, unfortunately, is done by men. And I think when men really begin to see violence against women as their problem, and they're committed to it as deeply as women are to stopping it, I really believe things will change in the Congo.
And of course, Marcus, one of the key things I think as you document what's happening in the Congo is that many people don't realize it's the women that do a lot of the work. They're such a major part of the workforce, with many of the men being involved in militia and in the military in general. It's the women who actually take up a lot of the workload burden, isn't it?
It's not. The women take up about 90% of the workload. They are about 90% of the economy in DRC. It's the women that give birth to the children. It's the women that collect the water. It's the women that do the cooking. It's the women that educate. The women that care. It's the women that provide the glue to society. And this is what's so terrible about this use of rape as a war crime, of sexual violence in conflict, is that it destroys that society, it destroys that structure, it rips away the glue from the villages, and these women that currently bind the villages together, that currently allow a village to be economically viable, it rips them apart because they're thrown out of their homes and they're thrown out of the villages because of the rape. And so this is why, unfortunately, it is such an effective tool. It is such an effective weapon of war, is because it rips apart whole communities. And
right. Sorry, the reason I'm stopping you, Marcus, is that... Hey, Eve, I'm going to give you the last word on this.
Not only are women the primary breadwinners, but women are incredibly exploited in terms of labor. And you will often see a woman carrying 100 pounds, 200 pounds sacks on their backs. And I think the real struggle right now is to get women to understand that they have the power, they just need to take the power. You know, they are actually making the country work. And yet at the same time, their money is taken away from them by their husbands. They are exploited like hell. I mean, I would virtually say it's slave labor in most cases, if you look at the kind of labor that women are doing. And if women really begin to know their rights and begin to know what they're entitled to, then they will actually take the power, because they actually have the power to be taken. So I think that's really an important point.
Well, Eve Ensler and Marcus Bleasdale, thank you very much for discussing this. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Riz.
Remember, you can follow our program on Twitter. We'll keep you notified on upcoming shows, and you can send us questions and comments to pose to our guests. On the next show, Tear Down This Wall. The man who wrote the immortal album The Wall more than 30 years ago is urging Israel to take down its separation barrier in the West Bank. Roger Waters reveals the passion behind his project for peace. Be sure to tune in for that. From me and the team, we'll see you next time.
Business Latest is brought to you by Qatar Gas, delivering energy to the world. Business Latest is brought to you by Qatar Gas, delivering energy to the world.
Personal blogs by professional journalists. blogs.aljazeera.net. This is Al Jazeera.
Welcome to the News Hour. I'm Lauren Taylor from Al Jazeera's news centres in Doha and London, and live from Benghazi, The Hague and Abuja. These are the main stories. New airstrikes on the Libyan town of Brega, but rebels say they're pushing back Gaddafi's forces.
I'm Stephen Cole in London with the reaction from Europe, including:
if forces under their command and control commit crimes, they could be criminally responsible.
a warning to Gaddafi as the International Criminal Court announces a full investigation into alleged human rights violations in Libya.
A new Prime Minister for Egypt as the man appointed by Mubarak resigns. And more than 200,000 flee their homes in Côte d'Ivoire to escape the latest bloodshed. Hello, we begin this news hour in Libya, where the noose continues to tighten around Muammar Gaddafi. The International Criminal Court has said the leader will be investigated for crimes against humanity. But Gaddafi has vowed to fight on, and much of that is being played out on the ground. His forces launched fresh airstrikes on the strategic oil town of Brega in the country's east. It's not clear what they targeted. Some reports say it could have been the airport, where anti-government protesters and pro-Gaddafi forces had been fighting for control. Other witnesses say the target was an airstrip belonging to a huge oil complex. Well, it comes after similar strikes on Wednesday when 2 warplanes dropped bombs on Brega's oil terminal. As tens of thousands of people continue to flee the violence, the UN says Libya's border crossings have reached crisis point. More than 50,000 Bangladeshis are still trapped, and their government says it has no plans to evacuate them. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court says he'll investigate Gaddafi and his supporters for human rights violations. Speaking at The Hague, Luis Moreno Ocampo said no one had the right to massacre civilians. And it's emerged that forces loyal to Gaddafi have captured 3 Dutch Marines in the coastal city of Sirte. The Marines had been involved in trying to rescue 2 Europeans who've since been handed over to the Dutch embassy in Tripoli. Well, as you heard, Brega in the east of Libya has seen some of the fiercest fighting